He thought I was just a broken old man begging for scraps. What he didn't know was that I'd spent 30 years as a federal prosecutor. And I was standing at his door because I'd already sent the warrant for his arrest. The FBI would be here in exactly 12 minutes. Let me back up. 3 weeks ago, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. You don't get calls at that hour unless someone's dead or dying. My heart was already racing when I grabbed it. Dad? Sarah's voice was so small I almost didn't recognize it. My daughter, who'd argued cases in front of hostile judges, who'd never backed down from a fight in her life, sounded like a frightened child. Baby girl, what's wrong? I need help. She was crying now. Dylan. He sold the house. Our house. Grandma's house. And he took Jake. The Victorian house on Lighthouse Avenue. The one my mother had bought in 1952 for $8,000 when Monterey was still a sleepy fishing town. The one she'd left specifically to Sarah in her will, kept in Sarah's name alone through the marriage. 4 generations of our family had lived there. What do you mean he sold it? That's your house. Your name's on the deed. I know. Her voice cracked. But somehow, the papers went through. Dad, I'm living in my car. I've been parking behind the library so nobody sees me. And Dylan filed for full custody. He's saying I'm mentally unstable, that I abandoned Jake. Where are you right now? The Safeway parking lot on Munras. Stay there. I'm coming. I live in Sacramento now. Have since I retired from the U.S. Attorney's Office 5 years ago. It's a 3-hour drive to Monterey in the middle of the night. I made it in 2.5. When I found her, my daughter was curled up in the back seat of her Honda Civic, wrapped in a sleeping bag that looked like it came from a camping trip 10 years ago. Her teacher's clothes were hanging on a rod across the back window. A duffel bag of toiletries sat in the passenger seat. She looked up when I tapped on the window, and I saw something I'd never seen in my daughter's eyes before. Defeat. We drove to a 24-hour diner. One of those old places with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that could strip paint. She wouldn't eat. Just wrapped her hands around a mug of tea and stared at it. Tell me everything, I said. Start from the beginning. Dylan had been acting strange for months, she said. Staying late at work. Business trips to San Francisco every weekend. She'd suspected an affair, but couldn't prove it. Then one day, she came home from school to find the locks changed. Dylan was standing in the doorway with a woman Sarah had never seen before. Younger, blonde, wearing what Sarah described as an engagement ring the size of a golf ball. This is Vanessa, Dylan had said, like he was introducing a colleague. She's my wife now. You need to leave. Wife? Dylan, what are you talking about? I'm your wife. Not anymore. I filed for divorce 6 months ago. You were served. Sarah had never been served. Never received any papers. But according to the county records Dylan showed her on his phone, the divorce was finalized 3 weeks prior. And the house? Also sold. 3 weeks prior. For $2.4 million. But it's my house, Sarah had said, her voice rising. Check the deed, Dylan had smiled. Both our names. Community property. I sold it. Deal's done. That's when Sarah had looked past him and seen it. Every piece of furniture, every photo, every memory, gone. Where's Jake? She'd asked, panic setting in. With me. Where he belongs. With his real family now. Dylan. He's 6 years old. You can't just. I can. And I did. You're unstable, Sarah. Everyone can see it. You've been having episodes. Remember? That's what I told the mediator. That's what's in the custody filing. Jake needs stability. Sarah had never had any episodes, but she had been to a therapist twice after her mother died 2 years ago. Normal grief counseling. Somehow, Dylan had gotten those records and twisted them into evidence of mental instability. She'd left that day with nothing but her purse and her car. Dylan had even kept her phone on the family plan, so he could track her location, monitor her calls. She'd had to buy a burner phone with cash she'd borrowed from a friend. I tried calling you, she whispered now, in the diner, but I was so ashamed. I kept thinking, You'd ask me how I let this happen. Sarah. I reached across the table and took her hand. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. I should have known. I'm a teacher, Dad. I'm supposed to be smart. Intelligence has nothing to do with it. Your husband committed fraud. Multiple felonies. From what you're telling me. She looked up at me then, and I saw a flicker of something. Hope, maybe. Can you help me? Baby girl, I said. This is what I did for 30 years, and I was very, very good at it. The next morning, I made a call to an old colleague at the FBI field office in San Francisco. Jerry Chen and I had worked a dozen cases together, complex financial crimes that took years to build. He owed me a favor, or 3. Robert Sterling, Jerry's voice was warm. Thought you retired to play golf and bore your neighbors with war stories. Turns out retirement doesn't suit me. I need a favor, Jerry. Personal matter. Name it. I laid out the basics. Property fraud, forged documents, possibly falsified divorce papers. And I needed it done quietly, before Dylan could move assets or disappear. Give me the address, Jerry said. I'll have someone pull the deed records today. While Jerry worked his end, I started working mine. I drove to the county recorder's office as soon as it opened. The clerk, a woman named Patricia, who'd been there for 30 years, remembered me from a case I'd prosecuted in the 90s. Mr. Sterling. Thought you'd left us for Sacramento. Just visiting. Patricia. I need to see some property records. My daughter's house on Lighthouse Avenue. She pulled up the files, and we went through them together. The deed showed Sarah's name. Only Sarah's name. Inherited property. Specifically excluded from community property under California law. But there was a quitclaim deed filed 3 weeks ago, signed by Sarah Sterling Morrison, transferring her interest to Dylan Morrison, notarized and recorded. Can I see the signature page? I asked. Patricia printed it out, and I felt my blood run cold. That wasn't my daughter's signature. I've seen Sarah's signature 1,000 times. She has this distinctive way of looping the S in Sterling. A flourish she picked up in high school. This signature was close, but the S was all wrong. Too tight, too controlled. Patricia, I'm going to need a certified copy of this. And I'm going to need the name of the notary. Sure thing. She peered at the document. Notary is Linda Chen. Office on Alvarado Street. Linda Chen's office was above a nail salon. One of those strip mall notary services that do passport photos and mailbox rentals. She was a nervous woman in her 50s who looked like she wanted to run the moment I walked in. I'm not in trouble, am I? She asked. Because I follow all the rules, I swear. I'm not here to make trouble for you, Miss Chen. I just need to verify a notarization you did 3 weeks ago. I showed her the quitclaim deed. She pulled out her journal, a legal requirement for notaries in California. Found the entry. Yes, I remember this one. October 28th. Woman came in, said she was Sarah Morrison, needed to sign over her property. Can you describe her? Blonde, late 20s, maybe early 30s. Nice dress. Said she was in a hurry. Did you ask for ID? Of course. I'm very careful about that. She showed me her journal entry. California driver's license. I checked the photo. Checked the signature on the license against her signature on the document. Everything matched. Did you keep a copy of the ID? No, but I wrote down the license number. Always do. She showed me the number, and I felt something click into place. Back at my hotel, I called Sarah. What's your driver's license number? She rattled it off from memory. It didn't match. Someone had created a fake ID. Someone blonde, late 20s. Someone who matched Vanessa's description perfectly. Jerry called me that evening. Robert, we've got a problem. Or rather, your son-in-law has a problem. Tell me. The deed fraud is clear-cut. Forged quitclaim, fake ID used for notarization. That's felony forgery and identity theft right there. But it gets better. Or worse, depending on whose side you're on. Go on. Dylan Morrison is a licensed real estate broker. That means he has a fiduciary duty to act in good faith. Selling his wife's separate property without her actual consent. That's not just fraud. That's a violation of his professional license, criminal fraud, and potentially elder abuse fraud, since the property was inherited from a deceased family member. What about the divorce papers? I had one of our forensic document analysts look at the court filings. The service of process paperwork is bogus. The address listed for service is a P.O. box that didn't exist at the time. The signature for the process server is from a company that went out of business 2 years ago. So the divorce isn't valid. Correct. Which means Dylan committed bigamy when he married Vanessa. That's another felony. And the custody filing? Based on fraudulent grounds, he falsified medical records, claimed Sarah had psychiatric holds that never happened. We've already contacted her therapist, who confirmed that Sarah had 2 sessions for grief counseling and was never diagnosed with any mental illness. I could hear papers rustling on Jerry's end. Robert, I've seen a lot of scumbags in my career, but this guy, he didn't just commit fraud. He orchestrated it. Every piece was calculated to destroy your daughter and take everything from her, including her son. Yeah, about that. We contacted the school. Jake's been absent 6 out of the last 12 days. When he does show up, teachers say he's withdrawn, not sleeping well. One teacher filed a concern report with the guidance counselor. My hands were shaking now. Where is Dylan keeping him? The house he bought with your daughter's money. 1847 Lighthouse Avenue. Your family's house. He was living in my mother's house, with his new wife, sleeping in rooms where 4 generations of my family had celebrated Christmas and birthdays and quiet Sunday mornings, using my grandson as a prop in his perfect new life. I want him arrested, I said. We're building the case now. But Robert, this is going to take time. We need to do this right. Get every charge to stick. How much time? 2, maybe 3 weeks. Make it 1. Robert, Jerry, my grandson is in that house, with a man who has demonstrated he has no conscience, no empathy, and no regard for the law. I'm not waiting 3 weeks. There was a long pause. Then Jerry sighed. What do you need? I need you to trust me. And I need a warrant executed at exactly the right moment. I spent the next week becoming Dylan Morrison's shadow. I know Monterey like the back of my hand. Grew up there. Knew every street, every alley, every coffee shop. Dylan thought he was clever. Thought he'd covered his tracks. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. I watched him drop Jake off at school every morning at 7:45. Watched him go to his office at Morrison & Associates Real Estate on Cannery Row. Watched him take long lunches with Vanessa at expensive restaurants, charging everything to corporate cards. I photographed him using my daughter's stolen money to buy Vanessa jewelry. Documented him accessing Jake's school records using Sarah's forged signature. Watched him call Sarah's principal, claiming to be concerned about his ex-wife's mental state around their son. Every move he made, I recorded. Every lie, every manipulation, every crime. On day 8, I watched him meet with another client at a cafe. A young couple, newly married, looking at property listings. I watched Dylan lean in, turn on the charm, show them photos of beautiful homes. I watched him do to them what he'd done to Sarah. The same smile, the same calculated sincerity. That's when I knew. This wasn't personal for Dylan. This was who he was. A predator. And Sarah wasn't his first victim. I called Jerry. I need you to run a background check. Every property transaction Dylan Morrison has been involved in for the last 5 years. I think we're looking at a pattern. 2 days later, Jerry called back. You were right. We found 3 other cases. Similar pattern each time. Married woman, inherited property, mysterious quitclaim deeds, divorces that seemed to finalize unusually fast. Did any of them report it? 2 did. Cases went nowhere. Not enough evidence. Dylan's good at covering his tracks, but not good enough. Not good enough. Jerry agreed. We've got him on multiple counts now. The DA is very interested. This isn't just fraud anymore. This is a pattern of racketeering. RICO predicates. For those who don't know, RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, is the big hammer. It's what we used to take down organized crime. It carries penalties of up to 20 years in federal prison. When can you move? I asked. 72 hours. We're coordinating with the local DA, the state real estate board, and the FBI. When we take him down, it needs to be airtight. I want to be there when it happens. Robert, I want to be there, Jerry. I've earned that. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you've earned that. On the morning of day 12, I put on my best suit. The charcoal Armani I used to wear to closing arguments. I looked in the mirror and saw the man I used to be. Not a retired pensioner, a prosecutor, a fighter. I drove to 1847 Lighthouse Avenue at exactly 8:15 a.m. Dylan would have just dropped Jake at school. Vanessa would be home alone. I rang the doorbell. She answered in yoga pants and a cashmere sweater, coffee mug in hand, looking like she'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. Up close, I could see she was younger than I'd thought, 26, maybe 27, pretty in that carefully maintained way that costs money. Can I help you? She asked, pleasant but wary. I'm looking for Dylan Morrison. Is he home? He's at work. Can I ask what this is about? I'm Robert Sterling, Sarah's father. The color drained from her face. Dylan said you two weren't in contact. Dylan says a lot of things. Most of them are lies. I looked past her, into the house. My mother's credenza was still in the hallway. The mirror she'd bought in Paris in 1968 still hung on the wall. Nice house. How long have you lived here? 3 weeks. Listen, Mr. Sterling, I don't want any trouble. Vanessa. I kept my voice gentle. How much do you know about how Dylan acquired this house? He bought it. From his ex-wife. She didn't want it anymore after the divorce. Did he tell you the divorce was final? Of course. I wouldn't have married him if she stopped. We're married. The courthouse. 3 weeks ago. Did you know he was still married to my daughter when you signed those papers? That's not. No. The divorce was final. He showed me the papers. Vanessa, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. 3 weeks ago, did Dylan ask you to do him a favor? Maybe go to a notary? Sign some papers for him? Her hand started shaking. Coffee sloshed over the rim of her mug. He said it was just a formality. That, Sarah had already agreed, but was too busy to go to the notary herself. He gave me her ID. Told me exactly what to say. She stopped, realizing what she'd just admitted. Vanessa, you just confessed to felony identity theft and fraud. No, I didn't know. He said it was fine. That Sarah knew. That it was all legal. Nothing about this was legal. Dylan forged documents, created a fake ID with your photo and Sarah's information, and had you impersonate my daughter to steal her property, a property worth $2.4 million. Oh my God. She sat down hard on the stairs. Oh my God. Where's the money from the sale? Dylan said. He said, it was going into renovations for our new office. And investments. Did you see any paperwork? Any accounts in your name? No. He handles all the finances. He said, I didn't need to worry about. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. I'm going to jail, aren't I? That depends on what you do in the next 2 minutes. I have colleagues from the FBI arriving at Dylan's office right now. They're going to arrest him on multiple federal charges. You have 2 choices. You can lie for him, protect him, and go down with him. Or you can tell the truth and cooperate with the prosecution. I'll cooperate, she said immediately. I'll tell them everything. I swear. I didn't know it was illegal. You thought you'd found a successful, charming man who swept you off your feet and married you in a whirlwind romance. She nodded, crying harder now. Vanessa, you weren't the first. And if we hadn't stopped him, you wouldn't have been the last. My phone buzzed. Text from Jerry. Package secured. Dylan was in custody. There's something else, I said. Jake. My grandson. Is he okay? I think he misses his mom. He cries at night sometimes. Dylan tells him. Sarah doesn't want him anymore. That she abandoned him. That's a lie. Sarah has been sleeping in her car, desperately trying to get her son back. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know any of this. You know now. And you're going to help make it right. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a federal building conference room with Jerry, the assistant U.S. attorney, and Vanessa's lawyer. Vanessa was across the table, her eyes red from crying, but her voice steady. She told them everything. The fake ID, the notary appointment, the money transfers. Dylan's bragging about how easy it had been to manipulate Sarah. His plans to do the same thing to 2 other clients. She gave them access to Dylan's computer, his files, his offshore accounts. By the time she finished, we had enough evidence to put Dylan away for 15 to 20 years. The next day, I went with Sarah to pick up Jake from school. Dylan was still in federal detention. No bail granted given his flight risk. Vanessa had signed an emergency custody order, returning Jake to Sarah. We waited outside the elementary school, Sarah practically vibrating with nervous energy. Then the doors opened, and there he was, 6 years old, wearing a backpack almost bigger than he was. He saw Sarah and stopped. For a moment, I thought he might run the other way. Dylan had spent 3 weeks poisoning him against his mother. Then Jake dropped his backpack and ran. Mommy! Sarah caught him, dropped to her knees, wrapped him in her arms. They stayed like that for a long time, both of them crying, while other parents and kids walked around them. Finally, Jake pulled back. Daddy said, "You didn't want me anymore." That was a lie, baby. I have wanted you every single second. I love you more than anything in the world. Are you coming home? Yes, we're going home. 2 months later, we stood in front of 1847 Lighthouse Avenue again. This time, with a moving truck and keys that actually belonged to us. The federal judge had ordered the property returned to Sarah. Every piece of furniture Dylan had sold, every photo, every heirloom, all of it tracked down and recovered. The buyers had been compensated by Dylan's frozen assets. Sarah's divorce from Dylan was annulled, like it never happened. His marriage to Vanessa was voided. His real estate license was permanently revoked, and the money from the house sale, still sitting in an account, waiting for the civil trial where Sarah would claim damages. We spent that first day just walking through the rooms, Jake running ahead, rediscovering his old bedroom, his toys, his life before Dylan shattered it. Sarah found me in my mother's old sewing room, looking at the photographs on the wall. 4 generations. My grandmother, my mother, me, Sarah, Jake. Thank you, she said quietly. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You didn't just get our house back, Dad. You gave me my life back. You gave Jake his childhood back. I was just doing what any father would do. No. She shook her head. Most fathers would have said, hire a lawyer and hoped for the best. You spent 30 years learning how to hunt people like Dylan, and then you used every bit of that knowledge to destroy him. He destroyed himself. I just made sure everyone could see it. She hugged me then, and I held my daughter the way I'd held her when she was Jake's age, when the world seemed scary, and I could still make everything better with a hug and a promise. What did they sentence him to? She asked. 12 years federal, plus state charges pending. With good behavior, maybe 8. But Vanessa's testimony opened up 3 other cases. He's going to be in court for years. Good. We stood there in silence for a moment. Then Sarah asked the question I'd been waiting for. When you showed up at his office that morning, when the FBI arrested him, what did he say? I smiled, remembering the look on Dylan's face when he'd seen me standing behind the federal agents. He said, "Who the hell are you? And what did you say?" I told him the truth. I said, "I'm the father of the woman whose life you tried to destroy. I'm a retired federal prosecutor, and I'm the reason you're going to spend the next decade in prison." Sarah laughed. A real laugh. The first one I'd heard from her in months. I wish I could have seen his face. Oh, Jerry got it on video. Federal policy, all arrests are recorded. I can get you a copy if you want. Really? Really? She hugged me again. You're a good dad. You're a good daughter. And an even better mother. That night, we ordered pizza and ate it on the floor of the living room. Boxes and furniture everywhere. Jake chattering about his plans to redecorate his room. My phone buzzed. Text from Jerry. Vanessa's testimony got 2 more victims to come forward. Morrison's looking at additional charges. This is going to be a big case. Thank you for bringing it to us. I texted back. Thank you for believing me. Always. That's what family does. I looked up at Sarah and Jake, covered in pizza sauce and laughing at some story Jake was telling. And I thought about Jerry's words. That's what family does. Dylan had counted on Sarah being alone. On her being too ashamed to ask for help. On her father being too old. Too irrelevant. Too powerless to matter. He'd made a lot of mistakes in his criminal career. But underestimating family? That was the biggest one. 3 months later, I got a letter. Federal prison stationery. Dylan's handwriting. I almost threw it away. But curiosity got the better of me. It was short. Just 3 sentences. I underestimated you. I thought you were just a retired old man. I was wrong. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer. He was right about one thing. He was very, very wrong.